I'll say something that's funny first, and then I have a really serious question to branch off of that. But there was a really stupid use of AI that I saw, but it was it was interesting. I can't remember if it was pizza or a hot dog, but all it did was recognize whether a picture of something was a piece of pizza or a hot dog, or it wasn't. That was it. That was the full extent of it. So that's the same, similar, let's say, technology to what you're talking about. And really, what we're saying there is that you can apply that in a myriad of ways. And one of them, somebody did really foolishly, where it's just saying, "Hey, is this a piece of pizza or a hot dog or whatever?" And then you could do something like what you're talking about, which is being able to actually recognize the piece of data, which is the name, with that input of the photo. So I guess my question becomes, what is the fear in that for a lot of people? Where do you think that we could get ourselves in trouble with essentially what is an ability to recognize anyone, facial recognition in crowds and those type of things? How do we control that? And what do you think that is a well placed fear? Or do you think that's people watching too much, science fiction movies or something?
Sure. And let me answer that question, but let me go back to the hot dog classifier because
Yeah.
that was one of my favorite um, AI systems. I think that was on Silicon Valley, wasn't it? Was that the name? Was that the TV show it was on?
There was a TV show that did something like that, but then somebody made it in real life that I saw too. And again, I
Oh,
never
somebody made it
downloaded it
in
because
real
it's
life.
funny.
Okay.
Yeah, they actually made it though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the reason I like it is because it actually captures the essence of every major AI system because that's all an AI system can do. It can classify things as, and in this case, it's just hot dog versus no hot dog. In other cases, it might be dog versus cat.
Yeah.
In other cases, it might be Steve versus Becky versus Allie versus Elaine.
Mhm.
Um, and that's all it can do. And the key thing that I explain in my book is that with all of these systems, there's absolutely no intelligence there. It's just a function relating inputs to outputs. But, and getting back to the question you asked, people see, gee, I can recognize faces. It can translate language on web pages. I can talk to Siri. Uh, Self-driving cars are around the corner. Um, all it can do all of these things, and it's this progress has just accelerated over the last 5 or 10 years. So people start to ask, where will it all end? Will AI robots get so smart that they try to exterminate us, or turn us into pets, or just take all our jobs? And you have uh, well-known people, smart, really smart people like Tesla founder Elon Musk, who says over and over that AI is humanity's biggest existential threat and that it poses a fundamental risk to the existence of civilization. Um, so, uh, both the progress and wondering where it will end, and the pundits who say it's going to end badly, um, lead people to worry, and I don't blame them. Uh, so, in my book, I explain in simple terms how AI works and why AI systems are not going to become intelligent enough to have that ability to exterminate us, turn us into pets, or even to take all our jobs, and why it won't happen in our lifetimes or our children's lifetimes, or I guess their children's lifetimes. You're my children's age.
So I think that's one point of clarification I'd like to make, and I do this just because it's fun for me. But I think one of the things we see with Elon Musk is a perfect example of this. Elon Musk, to the best of my knowledge, is not an AI expert. He's a very smart man. He's done very good. He's done a lot of things or whatever, but AI isn't specifically his field, right? Am I believe I'm correct in saying that.
Right.
And so that's one of the things I think we get ourselves in
Well,
trouble
yes,
with. Sorry, go ahead.
yes, except Elon Musk has one of the biggest AI labs at Tesla
Hmm.
because Tesla's autopilot is largely run on AI.
Hmm.
He's a major investor in, I believe, companies like OpenAI, which is one of the biggest labs in the world for AI. So he has access to the best researchers in the world, and I would love to be in a room and hear what the people who report to him, the AI researchers who report to him, if they really agree with him, because I can't imagine that they do.
And that's kind of overall the point that I'm getting to is that we have this thing where we label somebody a genius, very smart or whatever, and then we take all of their advice across fields that they're not necessarily that intelligent in. Like for example, and I don't want to guess all of your expertise, but your expertise is in AI. Does that suddenly make you an expert in aerospace or these other fields that don't really relate? And I think it's one of the things that we have to be very careful of. And Elon Musk, again, is the biggest offender of this, in my opinion, because he's seen as a very smart man. He seems very driven, all these things, whatever. So everything he says is given a certain credence as if he is this expert in every field. And as to your point, he has a lot of people who report to him who are working on his AI systems, and he owns a company that has AI in it. But I have two things with it. One, he's not the expert. And then two, if you believe it's an existential threat, why are you funding it? Why are you researching it and developing it? That's exactly how, if you were worried about it, wouldn't that be something you'd want to limit?
Yeah, yeah. Although, to be fair,
Mhm.
OpenAI, which has billions of dollars in funding, not just from Elon Musk, but from
Correct.
other well-known people, um, they only spend a third of their time developing AI. They spend a third of their time keeping it safe, and a third of their time working on policy, or so they say, or at least that's their charter. But
Yeah.
but the intention is there to keep it safe.
Yeah, and I think I said I think AI is one of those things that is going to be a boogeyman for years to come. And I'm hopeful with people like yourself out there trying to spread the truth of what's going on. And again, you've studied this for very many years, so you're not just out there trying to protect yourself, but you're also trying to educate. And I think that's what really is better than these sensational headlines from people who aren't experts in it saying those type of things. And I think that's where we
Yeah,
get ourselves in trouble because we're doing that same thing we do with a myriad of topics again where we're like, oh, it's going to take our jobs or it's going to kill us. And we say that about a lot of things and we get this very defensive position and then we halt it. I just don't want AI to become the electric car in like the 50s or 70s or whatever it was, where it's just beaten down by policy and fear for so many years that we ultimately don't get where we should be, which is now Tesla should have been excuse me, Tesla as a company should have existed in the 60s because we have a lot of the technology, not necessarily as nice as the Tesla is today, but we can make electric cars. And I don't want to see this become the situation with AI,
yep,
where now because
yep.
of fear, we start to push it back because the technology is there, but we're so scared of it, and we are also trying to protect our own interests today that we don't let it develop. So I think, like I said, that's why I think
Right,
you have an important
and
message to
that's
share.
happened.
Mhm.
Thank you, appreciate that. And that's happened twice in the past. So, the first time it happened was in the 1960s. People were really excited about AI, and then there were a couple of studies that showed that it could never work. So, one of the big studies was a lot of the research in AI in the 60s was in machine translation, like Google Translate.
Mhm.
And there was a big report that ended up causing a lot of the government funding to be stopped for AI that basically said, well, machine translation can never work because we can't figure out how to make computers think. And of course, now you have Google Translate that works really well and it
Mhm.
can't think at all. But so that was one time that it happened. And then the second time was during the 80s. So when I got started in AI in the early 80s, it was really hot. I mean, I started a couple, we started several companies and you couldn't keep the press away. Time magazine covers, Business Week covers, just as hot as it is now. And we generated too much hype.
Mhm.
Um, First company named Cognitive Systems, our brochure said, uh, the vision to change the world. Very humble,
Yeah, aiming low. I see.
aiming low. And, and everybody did that. And what happened was by the end of the 80s, AI just didn't live up to the hype. We didn't generate anything that really worked like facial recognition or Google Translate. And
Mhm.
by the end of the 90s, um, you couldn't put AI in a product description. A University of California at Berkeley professor named Stuart Russell said that in eight in 1985 he had 900 students in his AI 101 class on average. By 1990, it was 25.
Mhm.
And you're right. That might happen again, but I'm not so worried because on the engineering side, all these applications are coming out that are really having a positive impact and some that are having a negative impact.
Thanks for checking out Starting Nowhere. Come find us on Facebook so you can comment on this and other clips and episodes of Starting Nowhere.